Light Talk. Lumen Brothers. Light Talk. Light Talk. Light Talk. Lumen Brothers. Light Talk.
Hello and welcome to Light Talk. This is Stan, and I'm broadcasting from my state-of-the-art studio in the swamps of Gainesville, Florida.
Hi, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas.
And this is David in the beautiful Belmont Shore area of Long Beach, California, and we are the Lumen Brothers.
Yes, we are.
Episode 53.
Whoa,
which
this is
means
the first episode of next year.
that we are in next year.
Oh, my goodness.
Even though we're actually only in April, we're in next year because this is season 2.
Hey.
Right?
We ended the year pretty good with Don Holder, didn't we?
That rocked. That was fantastic having Don here. He was just so articulate and so great.
Gracious. Gracious, yeah.
Yeah, he was gracious. He was funny. He was,
And he had good things to say.
Yeah, that was the bonus. Yeah,
Yeah, even on top of all that, he had smart things to say.
There was
although
good
I want to
content.
debate with him a little more about the spiky source issue.
Well, we should have a spiky source out, right?
We could have
Where
a spiky
you two
source
are in
app.
the corners. Yeah, exactly. And we say, "What's a spiky source?"
Well,
And what's not a spiky source?
So, spiky source is a laser. That's like 1 nanometer.
Oh, okay. So anyway, yes, thank you, Don, again for last week's wonderful, wonderful interview. And our listeners have been raving about it all week. And I think it was a pretty good surprise mystery guest. I think we did well, guys. And I just want to do a shout out to Dana, who really came up with that idea. It wasn't somebody from Washington. It was my wife who basically said, "Hey, you guys are dumb. This is what you got to do. You got to get somebody big, somebody really big." And, and we pulled it off. So thank you. And, one other thing we found out, we had several people, really big people, actually contact us and were willing to do it.
That's true. And they're lined up now. They're all lined up, right?
We have them lined up. And we're not going to mention any names, but these are prominent designers in the industry. So look forward to announcements coming up.
Yeah. More people coming to talk to us.
All right, absolutely. So we need to get going because this is going to be a huge show today. We got a new For Your Consideration segment in the middle where we are actually going to do a quick, well, maybe not a quick review, but it will be a review of that wonderful production of Jesus Christ Superstar live in concert that appeared about 2 weeks ago on NBC. It was live. I must tell you right now that I really, really loved it. But we'll get more into that after our first round of listener questions. And then we have some news, something that just happened this past week, and that is the merger of PRG and VER. And this could be pretty big. Steve, do you have any information on this?
Well, I mean, there's a couple things here. We all know who PRG is, and VER is not a household name in the theater market, perhaps, but VER is based out of Los Angeles, California, and they are a global provider of a production equipment. So you see their work on, say, the Super Bowl or the Olympics or something of that scale. And I think what you're seeing is the merger of two gigantic companies coming together to be one kind of planetary production company. So this has serious ramifications. There's some good things on that, but I know, Stan, you're a little worried about when these kind of super companies come together. How do you feel about one big super production company?
I think it probably, I'm looking at their offices. Most of them are actually located in the United States and North America. There's a couple of locations outside the country. I think it's the double-edged sword. I think part of this is, like when PRG, David was mentioning earlier to me that, PRG gobbled up a bunch of small rental houses in New York and New Jersey, 4-Star, Production Arts, Bash, and started the beginnings of PRG. I think there's, it's sort of an energy that's happening sometimes in the business world. There's a lot of mergers and acquisitions going on, and of course our business is also susceptible to that. There's pros and cons. Sometimes economies of scale can reduce costs and for end users. Sometimes you might lose a personal relationship with an agent that you worked with because the place gets bigger. It's creative destruction, man. It's like how Marx describes capitalism. Something comes along and destroys one thing and creates something new, and sometimes that something new is better. If you believe in free market forces, that free market does good all by itself, then maybe it'll be a good thing. If you don't, then maybe it isn't. I don't know. I think our industry is bigger than it was before the mergers and acquisitions and entities like PRG, so maybe it will be good. On the other hand, maybe not. I mean, if you own a mom and pop shop, it might be bad for you. I think it depends on where you are in the food chain.
David, you were saying that you went to a VR party after event party. So you can speak to what VR is definitely bringing to PRG.
They are definitely bringing great food and drinks. I will tell you that right now. It was really a wild party in Las Vegas.
Well, there's an upside to it then.
There's a huge upside to it. And I will not get into details, but everybody was there. It was after that laser show that you went to, Steve. And actually, it was after the dinner that Stan and I spent, and I went out to meet my friend Terry Harper, and sure enough, the alcohol was flowing, and people were driving golf balls into the night. So yeah, it was fun for all. All right, so more news later. Stan has our first listener question.
All righty then. So our friend Mindy in Wisconsin. Hey, I like Wisconsin. I like Wisconsin in the summer. I want to buy a few regular lights to expand our inventory for our local small theater. I was wondering if you've ever bought equipment marked as, quote, as is, end quote. Well, I assume she's talking about tungsten halogen because she says regular light. So I think she means a conventional fixture. I have bought used lights. I used to sell used lights when we were at Production Arts in the 80s. We could sell off some rental inventory. I think the answer depends what your needs are. If you're not picky in terms of the quality, you can probably do just fine. I think it depends on who you're buying it from. I think it depends on whether they've taken care of it, whether they just taking it off the truck when it came back from tour and just putting it in a box and sending it to you, or did they tune it? Did they clean it? Did they align the lamp? I bought a bunch about 10 years ago. I forget from who, and they were banged around so much we could not bench focus them. So they've always been a problem. So we tried. So I think there's a risk involved. But then again, if money is an issue and you need to save some, then just be careful about where you get them from and see what they tell you about it. Do a little research, and could work out just fine.
Yeah, I don't buy anything as is. I think that if you're selling something, you have to have some type, of standing behind that product. Even if it's a 30-day, promise no DOA, which, by the way, means dead on arrival. People don't know that. It's an old Blood Rock song from the 70s. Non-DOA, guarantee.
It's like buying a used car as is. You don't know what you're getting. As is.
That's right.
David's point is correct. I mean, there's useLight.com. There are some decent companies out there that will sort of stand behind it and probably do clean them up before they send them out. But as is means it might have been hanging for 25 years and they never did any maintenance on it. So David's point is well taken.
Abby in Texas wants to know, I'm working on a show at my high school. We really could use a headset system. We can't afford to buy anything, and we need to be on a headset system for 5 people. Any suggestions? Well, I mean, I think that's a rough question. You need a headset system, but you can't buy anything, so what do I do? I think you're going to have to bite the bullet and buy something. Or you're going to have to rent something. So I would certainly call up your local AV company or your local lighting production company and see if you can rent something. But I don't think that's the long-term answer. 5 is a lot. I think you need to really think about buying a headset system. And there's a couple different ways you could go. You could go with Clearcom. And if you've looked at that, then 5-station wireless headset system is about $8,300. If you do the same thing that's kind of wired, you're looking at about $5,000. And there's pros and cons of both wireless and being tethered. But again, $8,000 to $5,000 is a lot of money. So I'm hearing what you're saying. What you might consider doing is going to a company called EarTech. EarTech makes a 6-station wireless headset system for $1,200. They've gotten a lot of good reviews. They specialize in wireless. And this would be a good entry-level system to get into. So what I would recommend is you call EarTech, you find out who the dealer in your area is, and see if you can get a system to test. And I think they might be willing to do that because if they can sell their system to one high school in your school district, they'll probably sell it to 5 or 6.
Well, that's a great, great suggestion. But I have an even better one if you have no money. You have zero money and you want a headset system. 2 words, FaceTime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or Skype.
You all have you can do Skype or
FaceTime.
You do a group FaceTime.
And
I know that sounds crazy,
stick your
but
headphones
it's true.
in. Yeah,
you there it is, and you make sure that there's a router, a wireless router on stage, so that it's close to all the stations. And I would never do this, but if you have no money and you're desperate, I think this is how you do communication amongst a group of people for free.
Yeah. If there's literally no money, I think David's got the answer to there for you. So if they have a little bit of money, and I think the EarTech is a good idea. We don't know what their costs are. You cannot. They're also. I don't know if they still make these, but they used to make these little single band walkie-talkies. So let's say you were going on a camping trip with your family and there's 5 or 6 of you and you're going in different directions. You'd stick these in your pocket and you'd probably go like 3 or 4 miles, the people would stay in touch. I did it when I moved with my wife, and you can put a set of headphones, inexpensive earphones, into the little walkie-talkie jack. They're 9-volt batteries. They'll run for the length of a couple of shows. And that might be a less expensive way. But if you've got nothing, then I think David's got the only answer for you.
Great. Well, good luck with those headsets, and also be thankful that none of us suggested the old paper cup and string. Right. Because even we're not going to suggest something that crazy, which actually works though. By the way, it was pretty amazing. All right. So our next question is from Carla in New Orleans, and Carla says, I recently went to a club where the house lighting designer completely took me out of the music with all kinds of flashy light cues that did nothing to support the music. He clearly did not know the set or how to support the band.
Yeah. Right.
What can I do?
What can she do?
Don't go to that club anymore. But let me tell you what.
Well, there's a lot of that going on. I mean,
here's the deal. You're right, Stan. There is unfortunately a lot of that going on, but there's also a lot of good DJ lighting designers.
Sure.
I mean, it's some of the best lighting design I've seen in the past 10 years. Actually, 20 years have been DJ. And now, okay, that being said, electronic music, electronic dance music, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, this is obviously someone who's not connected to the music. When I realized that light and music connected was back in 1970 when I actually watched an Alice Cooper concert. And the main lighting rig for his concert was basically a par 56 strip light. It's laying down in front of him. And it was up lights, 3 colors, and it was activated by touch panel. So he had someone basically playing the lights to his music. And this person knew the beat, he knew the songs, and or she, I'm not sure it was a man or a woman doing it. And it was amazing. It really was. Because that person, that lighting artist, was connected to the music.
Yeah.
And it seems obvious to me that the situation at this club, either someone was running it and they had no idea what the music was doing, or maybe it was just on some sort of random chase, and they left and they went back to do something else. Some clubs, they can't afford lighting DJs. So sometimes they'll just put all their lights in their demo modes and just walk away, which
She's
is
saying
really,
he
truly
was actually
unfortunate.
doing that. This designer was actually that was what he was doing.
Yeah, but I'm saying that in some clubs where you can't see the designer, sometimes those lights are just randomly going on and off.
Right. Well, sometimes people get wrapped up in making the machine work, and that's the goal, and they think that's the accomplishment, as opposed to, and sometimes even my students feel that about me. They think, oh, he's going to come and do the technology for me. I'm really not so interested in teaching you the technologies once we're in the theater. I mean, once you're in the building or in the club, you know how the stuff works. I'm interested in what kind of image are you making, and what is the art involved. And so, not everybody focuses on that, or not everybody has that talent. So what could you do? I mean, what do you do? You just roll your eyes, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, my nephew is in the DJ scene here in LA, and he goes to clubs and he basically performs for free, and hopefully getting to be discovered. If they're paying him nothing, they're paying the poor lighting tech nothing. So a lot of times it's you get you get what you pay for, and it's really a shame, because lighting and music is everything, especially in a dance club. And if they don't realize it, that club is going to go down the tubes. So
I'm curious what Steve has to say about this, because he's done so much music.
Yeah.
I think you went to a club where the LD sucked. Carla, you see this everywhere. It doesn't have to be at a club in New Orleans. It can be on a national tour. It can be in a summer stock theater. You have people who just don't know what they're doing. And one of the things that is an earmark of these people is they make the lights the most important thing in the show. So probably you didn't specify one way or the other. It might have been a wonderful light show. It seems to me that what you're saying is it had nothing to do with the music and simply called attention to itself. And that can be deadly for anything on stage.
Right. And I think, Carla, that you ought to be proactive about this. Because if you went to a restaurant and you ordered a steak and that food was terrible, you'd complain. You'd tell the chef or the waiter, take this back. If you got terrible service, you'd tell the maitre d' the service was terrible. You're getting bad lights, you got to tell somebody.
Do you know I do that in restaurants when there's the other day I was at a restaurant and the LED downlight was flickering on the table, on a white tablecloth. And I went to the waiter came over and I said, this is really not acceptable. I said, well, look at this. Look, I put my hand under the light and I said, see how that's flickering? Some people would get a seizure from that. I won't. That really needs to be dealt with. And they were like, they didn't know how to handle that. And then they said, what would you like to do? And I said, well, give me another table, because I'm thinking you're going to fix the light right now. So I think when quality is low and it affects your experience, you should be polite and diplomatic and certainly say this is not okay. Like sending back bad food.
Yeah. I mean, we have to have a higher standard of our own existence. And how do you like that? I think that's the title of the show. High standard of our own existence. Okay, anyway. So terrific. So thanks, Carla, and good luck. And don't go to that club anymore.
Yeah, until they get a better. If you're a better lighting designer, maybe you should offer your services.
There you go. That's taking a bad situation and making it into an opportunity. Yeah, follow Stan's advice.
Take a bad song and make it better. Hey, where's that from? That's from a song, isn't it?
Hey, Jude.
Hey, Carla. Go take the bull by the horns, walk on in there, say, hey, I know something about lights. Why don't you give me a shot? I'll do it for free the first night. And then if you like what I do, you can hire me.
Oh, Stan, that's it. You got it, man.
Higher standard of your existence. There you go.
The higher standard of your existence.
You are listening to the Light Talkers, Steve, Stan, and David, the Lumen Brothers. And this week, Light Talk is sponsored by...
We have a public service announcement from No More 10 out of 12s. Well, the summer festival season is upon us, and that means mosquitoes. Those pesky little bastards that can make an LD's life miserable. But what can you do? Sprays are stinky and stain your clothes. Well, the good folks at No More 10 out of 12s recommend the following 3 steps. Number 1, mosquitoes hate bubbles. Just plug in 3 or 4 bubble machines near the console. The only thing mosquitoes hate more than bubbles are bubbles scented with Victoria's Secret bombshell perfume. You will smell great and the mosquitoes will stay away. Number 2, mosquitoes love carbon dioxide. So load up your stage crew with heavy beer drinkers, pregnant ladies, and just fat and out of shape people. With all that heavy breathing going on, backstage will look like a mosquito all-you-can-eat buffet. Number 3. Finally, if there are no large people, pregnant ladies, or bubble machines to act as your natural mosquito deterrent, a pet pig will work just as well. Mosquitoes always go for the highest body temperature, and Porky is a few degrees warmer than you. Just tie him up at the console and watch him suffer.
Oh, geez.
And as a bonus, if your tour ends in Texas, well, hell, goodbye, Porky. Hello, barbecue.
Yeehaw.
This has been a public service announcement from no more 10 out of 12s.
Oh, my God.
Oh, boy.
No animals were damaged.
Making of this sponsor.
Making this
I just want to add, where I grew up in Clinch Mountain, a man with a pig was very popular with the ladies.
Yes, you've said this, and
pigs are
this is
smart.
something
Pigs are
I'm
smart.
working on. This, I think we should all do a sociological test and bring pigs to our classes.
Oh, little ones, like guinea pigs or big ones?
No, a guinea pig is not a pig.
That's
I mean a pig, a big hog.
I think, David, if you got yourself a Tesla and a pig and went over to Rodeo, you could walk down the street and, I mean, people, men and women, would be flocking to you going, how cute.
I'm going to follow Steve's suggestion. When I get my Tesla, I'm going to tie a pig to it.
And put lipstick on it. And now, back to Light Talk.
All right, so we have a new For Your Consideration segment here. 2 weeks ago, NBC had a live concert version of Jesus Christ Superstar. They've done this before. They did Sound of Music and Music Man, and to be quite frank, I was never impressed with their live shows. However, they pulled out all stops on this one, and I was so damn impressed. So I thought we'd take some time to talk about this because it was a big production and a big deal. First of all, I got to start off saying that I love Jesus Christ Superstar.
Me too.
It came out in 1970. I was 15 years old. For people who could do the math and know how old I am now, but who cares? And the first thing I did when that Brown album came out, I sat down, I put on my headphones, and I listened to it. As soon as it finished, both records, I went to the piano and learned the whole score. I just basically learned it. I taught myself how to play it. That's the type of effect it had on me.
Hey, I burned up 2 versions of the vinyl. That's how much I loved it. It's still memorized. I can still sing every song by heart.
Yeah, and this is interesting because I'll tell you just a little bit of history. I saw an interview with Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's a recent interview, and it was when they were doing the Arena show back in 2013, which, by the way, is also a really good production. If you haven't seen it, go see it. Patrick Woodruff lit that, and it's beautifully lit and very interesting design and great performances. But he was talking about when him and Tim Rice first wrote it, they wrote it as a concept album. They never had the idea that it would ever be produced, and they didn't write it to be produced. So if you listen to the score, you will realize that there really aren't many transitions in it.
Mm-hmm. This is from one song to the next. Yeah,
and it really was, and for scene changes and things like that.
Like Tommy.
Yeah, like Tommy, very much like Tommy. So they did not ever expect it to be produced, and they really didn't want it to be produced. So for years, he wouldn't have anything to do with any sort of production of it until about 10 years ago when someone came up and said, hey, how can we make this work? And he said, the only way we can make this work is if we do an arena show. We do it like a rock concert. And that's how that arena show came to be back in 2013. So what this show was, this one that was done a couple of weeks ago on NBC, live in concert, was much more theatrical. It was done in an indoor space that was sort of converted into a large performance space. It was produced at the Williamsburg Marcy Armory in Brooklyn. And by the way, you guys should go on our Light Talk Facebook group site and We have links to live designs, slideshows of the light plots and of the stills of the show. It's really, really quite beautiful. And when you look at the light plots, there are several plots that show you the sections of the building so you can see how vast this building was. But the great thing about it is because of the vastness of the building, you got some amazing long throws, giant strokes of light, and then have them come through the scaffolding and create these beautiful shadows and color tones. And it was just really stunningly beautiful. So let me just go quickly before we start, just some production credits. The costume designer was Paul Taswell. I believe Paul designed Hamilton. The production designer was Jason Ardizona West. And the lighting designer was Al Gurdon. And kudos to these amazing artists. In my opinion, this show was beautifully, beautifully designed and directed, by the way, and produced. I mean, I just love the opening. The opening was amazing, but we'll get to that in a second. We all know who was in it. It was John Legend played Jesus. Sarah Bareilles played Mary. Brandon Victor Dixon, an incredible Judas. Absolutely incredible Judas. Alice Cooper, King Herod. Ben Daniels, Pontius Pilate. Norm Lewis, Caiaphas. Jason Tram, Peter. Jin Ha, Annas. And Eric Gronwall was Simon. So they really put together this great cast. And a lot of people were wondering about John Legend because, John's range doesn't exactly fit into the role. But I thought they did a really good job in tweaking the arrangements so that his voice did work. And also, well, there were strong parts, there were weak parts. I thought that
I agree. I was a little disappointed.
Understand, he's not an actor.
Right. And that's clear.
And he's around all these Broadway actors who are really great. And I thought they helped him through it.
I think they did, but I think the weakness was very apparent.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like to explain?
No, I guess I have very high expectations of that role, particularly musically and vocally, and the power that needs to be there, and the versatility and the range that needs to be there. So for me, I don't know him that well, to be honest. So I don't, pop star, but I was just a little disappointed.
Well, of course, when you're comparing him to Ian Gillan, who sang the original, right. And that guy has a range of like 5 octaves or something like that.
I had high expectations, right?
Yeah, and the expectations I truly understand, and understand also that he wrote that for someone like Ian Gillan.
Right.
So that in Gethsemane, those screams are there for a reason.
They're the best. They're amazing. Yeah.
And that was the one song that I was very disappointed with because no matter how they changed the arrangement, it did not work. I thought that was a low point of the show. But really, in my opinion, the only low point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm sort of biased. I've been spoiled by the great singers who've done that song, and as I was watching it, I was singing it and going, "Come on, man, give me what this song is." So I was, it was hard for me. But and I think your point is well taken about in contrast to the other performers who were up there who really had the voice, had the presence, were actors, had the stage. It's sort of just in contrast. He's Jesus Christ, for goodness sake.
So enough about the actors. This is a lighting podcast, so let's talk about the lighting. As mentioned before, Al Gurdon was the lighting designer. PRG was the lighting supplier. A few of the companies supplying the lighting equipment: GLP, PRG, Verilight, Clay Paikey, ARRI, TMB, Chroma Q, iColor, ETC, and probably a few that I didn't mention here. The follow spots were 11 PRG Best Boys with ground control systems, which is why everyone was always covered with follow spots. And the follow spot work was absolutely beautiful. Sometimes they used gobos in the follow spots. It was terrific and was very sensitive. So let's talk about the design of the show. So Stan, what did you think about the set?
In some ways, it reminded me of a skiing house, like ancient Greek theater. There was a 4-stage, and then there was a big building behind them and to the sides, and the scaffold and the walls and the people interspersed in it, and the camera work. I did think that the opening was amazing, but I thought they got a little carried away with the intercutting. I thought it was a little, and maybe for today's generation, it's just fine. For me, it was like, wait a minute, too many cuts. I can't, give me a moment to absorb some of these angles. So, and then, but then what I also liked about the camera work was the tight shots and then the wide shots and the medium shots, and giving me a sense of the entire environment. The crane shots were great. I really, really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the scale. And David points out about how the light responded from those long distances, the color, I think, and also great detail on faces when the camera could just bring me right in there. So I did like it a lot.
Stan was talking about the set design. It was sort of like this bombed out church, and they had all the scaffolding around it that they were
It's
rebuilding.
It's a nod to the movie and the Broadway set, I think, as well, with scaffold.
And then, something Stan said that he didn't like all the cuts. I differ, because that opening of this production was brilliant, because it hits you right in the face, and there's so much energy, and it's this constant crescendo that happens with different textures of instruments going in and out during the overture. And it was frantic on stage. Those 4 women playing the string instruments were incredible. That immediately, as soon as they walked out on stage, you knew the style and the attitude of the show. And then the guitar player on stage was great, and they all turn up stage and look at the wall, and the wall opens. In that overture, another great part of it that I loved was when that guy was spray painting with the Hudson sprayer Jesus' name. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but at the end, during the 39 Lashes, there were like 2 people upstage with a big bucket of red paint, and they were just covering his name up. I Don't Know How to Love Him. There was that lovely moment in the middle with those beautiful string crescendos where that light pierces through the ceiling hole. She stands in it, this incredible clear gobo wash coming down on her. And then as soon as she comes back in and we go back into the last verse, that light sort of recedes in a beautiful fade. Also, there was that lovely moment at the end of Everything's All Right, where the 3 of them are isolated on stage. Lovely little button to that piece, and tells a story. And also, I thought Alice Cooper's number was great, with those VTSs. The chase was really exciting using those digital strip lights, and also gave us a different feel because you had all these vertical toning strips just framing those dancing girls. Plus, probably the greatest mic drop in history. Yeah. And then finally, I just thought Damned for All Time was great. The leading into it where you had the 4 squares, and Caiaphas and the priests are sitting in the squares, and then Judas comes out, and he's sort of surrounded by these 4 really intense white squares. Very exciting, very threatening. Loved it.
And the end, of course, the ending was, I don't use this word often, but the ending was sublime. It was sublime, absolutely sublime. And the beautiful rigging of bringing him up there, and then the walls are you only have the vertical of the cross, and you wonder how are they going to make the horizontal, and then you don't know that the 2 walls on the side have a split. It opens up, you get the horizontal, and then you track him on the rigging upstage and away into a ball of light. I mean, it was sublime, absolutely sublime. And I did check the credits on that at the end. That was our friends at Foy. That was Flying by Foy.
You got to do it, and I must tell you that a lot of times when you do something like that, they hit a hot spot as they go through the beams of light,
right? And
it looks really stupid. And this was lit so beautifully that he just literally faded out.
Well, if you had a bunch of fixtures focused at one point and you had haze, you're just going to have a big glowing ball, and he just looks like he just tracked through it and was behind it.
One other thing I do want to say, and that is that light wall at the end. When I first saw it, it was like a chasing light wall, and I noticed that they were tungsten fixtures, and they were actually VL5s. And the beauty of that is that when they go out, and goes back to our last show or 2 shows ago when we were talking about strobes and lightning, is that there was a delay on the filament, so that when that light went out, you actually saw a delay, which added to the effect of the chases. So I'm sure that's one of the reasons why he specified those.
Here's something to say. I always sort of, at the end of movies, I was taught this at a young age as professional courtesy to sit and watch the credits because you never know who might be on the show. So I did that, and my friend, shout out to Mac Jinseko, who's a Verilight programmer. He wasn't the programmer on the show. He just said production crew, but I noticed him in the credits. So how you doing, Matt? And glad to see you on that show.
So there were a lot of techniques used, beautiful use of color, beautiful use of dynamics, and beautiful use of space, especially with all that haze and all those really super powerful lights coming through them. But I do have to say one final thing, and this has turned out to be one long damn review. But as great as the show was, NBC destroyed it with having a string of commercials every 10 minutes. You talk about ruining the flow of a show. They managed to do it. Why they couldn't find the sponsors to just run their commercials during an intermission. Like run the show for 45 minutes. Act 1, 45 minutes. Act 2, 45 minutes. In the middle, do 10 minutes of commercials. I don't care. But don't kill the flow of a show. Anyway, that's Jesus Christ Superstar. And I can't wait for the DVD to come out so I can watch it without those damn commercials. So, Steve, what's our last listener question?
We have a question from Scooter in California. And he says, how do you feel about crossing a picket line? For example, you're designing a show and the IA throws up a picket line. Will you cross? What about me? I'm not a union member. Well, there's a couple things to consider here. There are two types of strikes, right? There is a strike that is sanctioned by the union, and clearly they're at a point where they've gone to arbitration. The grievance is not being recognized by the producer, and they have no alternative now except to strike. When the union puts a strike up, that's really rough on the producer, but it's also rough on the union members themselves. The producer has bills that he or she is still paying, and the union workers clearly have bills that they're still paying. They still have house payments to make. They still have car payments to make. So a strike action is a fairly aggressive move. And there are no winners here. People suffer. So when you see the IA out there on strike, they did not take that lightly. There's
True.
a serious issue that they're bringing to play. The other type of strike is called a wildcat strike. And a wildcat strike is not sanctioned by the union. But I think if it were me, I would honor both of those picket lines. I would honor the picket line that is an organized strike, and I would also honor the picket line that is a wildcat strike. And the reason I would do that is that, and let me just put a disclaimer in here. I am very pro-union. There's a thing called collective bargaining, and there's a thing that the union brings to negotiations is a strength in numbers. And the union is out there fighting for every one of us, whether you work at, a non-union shop or you're a day laborer. The union has brought us weekends, 40-hour work weeks, overtime pay, medical leave. The union has done a lot for all of us. So I think if we have to suffer a little bit as designers by not crossing that picket line, personally, I would not cross it.
I'm with Steve. I'm pro-union. I'm the son of a Teamster. I think that unions can take things too far sometimes, but generally speaking, even if you're management, it's better to negotiate with one entity than 500 individuals. So collective bargaining is a positive for both. I'm happy to see that the teachers in certain states right now are striking. I think K-12 teachers have been abused for way too long in this country, and that they're finally standing up, and I think that's right. I would not cross a picket line because, as Steve says, there's probably a pretty good reason why it reached that extreme point of a strike. I have felt that even where I am, there are times where things became so toxic that strikes might have been the only alternative. I support brothers and sisters in unions, and I think they actually, in general, I have somebody I know is a construction manager in a state nearby where Steve lives, and builds buildings. And then he was up in another state where there were union workers and made the comment to me, I can't believe how good the quality of construction is here compared to where I live. And I said, well, in this particular place, the unions take a lot of pride in the quality of their work. And in other places, you get the cheapest labor, and you do, as Steve said, you get what you pay for.
Scooter also brings up an interesting point, and he says, I am not a union member.
Right.
The thing about it, Scooter, is you don't have to be a union member. You are working in a building where you are reliant upon the IATSC. there are union members in there who are making your day function better. They're making you look good. They're coming in at time, on budget. They're bringing a lot of education and training to what you are doing. So even though you're not a union member, you are being supported and your career is being advanced by highly skilled stagehands who are helping put your work on stage.
Totally agree with Steve. I'll tell a quick story. I worked at the Joyce in New York for many years, which is a premier New York dance theater. And when I was working, I know Steve has too, with Le Monde. When I was working there, not as a designer, but as a hand, it was non-union. And there was a point where the guys and the gals who were working at the Joyce felt like they wanted representation. And they went to the union, and the union entered into negotiations with the Joyce. The Joyce didn't have a lot of money at that point, and they were so basically the union and the theater were courting all of us because there was a vote. That was because in New York that was the case. The people who worked there had a right to vote, whether to unionize or not unionize. And the local one was courting us to vote pro-union, and the Joyce was courting us to vote the other way. And essentially, you know, I'm not going to talk about how I voted at the time, but it was a tricky thing. But essentially, the Joyce is now union. It did go union not long after I departed working there, and it probably for the people that work there and for the Joyce is still working and still mounting dance, and they managed to work that out. So generally speaking, you do. Everybody, Steve's point is, I'm just trying to amplify Steve's point that you do benefit from working in a collectively bargained environment. Generally speaking,
Scooter, one last thing from me. It takes, I believe, I was looking in the kind of archives here. I think it takes 80% of the union members to vote to go on strike. So there's a big discussion, and everyone has a voice before a strike is called.
yeah, doesn't happen easily, right?
Well, that Hammond organ solo tells us that once again you've spent the precious 45 minutes of your life listening to Light Talk. Look for the next episode of Light Talk here on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, Spotify, or the Light Talk Facebook group page. And while there, post your comments and questions, and be sure to subscribe to Light Talk. That way you won't miss 1 second of Lumen Insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
In other words, don't crucify your theater.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and the Republic of Texas.
Don't forget to keep those questions coming. You can email us at David, Stan, or Steve at lighttalk.org.
And be sure to tune in next week for our interview with lighting programmer Brad Schiller.
Oh, yeah. And all that and a new sponsor, Light Talk, coming your way every single Saturday.
We'll see you all next week. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.